Hello and welcome back to Life of Soph. Today I'm going to be telling you about my Apple AirTag. I feel like AirTags have become more popular recently and people are kind of talking about all different kinds of ways of using them. And the reason that I bought one was actually to track my suitcase for my Thailand holiday, which happened last September. So today I'm going to be showing you my AirTag and then I'm going to be talking a little bit about how I found it on 2 different trips that I've taken. So if you're interested to see whether or not you should be taking an AirTag in your luggage, spoiler alert, you should, then keep watching. The idea of having an AirTag is that they can track anything that can be lost, basically. So it could be keys, handbags, they have the option of a bike, all kinds of different things. And actually my partner's mum was talking about how she'd seen somebody on YouTube that was saying they would never travel without an AirTag in their suitcase in future. And that kind of got me thinking, and I actually ummed and ahed a little bit about whether to do it because I'm a little bit of a panicker and I was worried that if I had an AirTag in my luggage and it didn't work properly, that I would then be panicking that my luggage had been left behind. Apple do actually say that it's not ideal to use an AirTag for moving items because it can't always like keep up with where you are. But having said that, I've had a couple of experiences where I can actually watch it traveling with me. So I wouldn't necessarily say that's true, although I would say in my experience that they're not pinpoint. So when I'm not traveling, I have my AirTag in my car, and my reason for that is because I am terrible at remembering where I've parked. So the idea was that if I forgot where I'd parked, I could just look at my AirTag on my phone and it would tell me. However, I actually did this 2 nights ago because I'd forgotten where I'd parked in this retail park close to where I live. And it was not very accurate at all. It's more for kind of general area. Something that's really important to mention is that there's recently been quite a few media reports of people being stalked using AirTags. So somebody would buy an AirTag, put it in, I don't know, a woman's handbag or in a car or whatever, and then obviously they can follow whoever owns those items. You'll see that when I was setting up my AirTag, I actually got a little warning message about the kinds of things that Apple are doing to prevent that from happening. Obviously, I only have my own AirTags, so I don't know how effective they are or anything like that, but it is something that Apple are dealing with, which I think is brilliant. So that is a little introduction to AirTags and kind of my use of them and what I do outside of traveling. But now I want to tell you a little bit about the 2 trips that I've been on where I've put the AirTag into my suitcase to track where it is. So the first time I used my AirTag was on my trip to Thailand, and this was quite an interesting one actually because there was a changeover in Doha. So the first flight was London to Doha and then it was Doha to Phuket. So you can see in this clip here that I was on the tube on the way to the airport, and as I said, you can actually see it moving along with me. So in terms of movement, I don't know if it kind of only works up to a certain speed or what, but it did actually track along with me. When we got to the airport, it did flash up that like your luggage is no longer with you. You can turn off the notifications for that, but I just like to have them on. And I did try and track it kind of moving through the airport. And while it wasn't necessarily that precise, it did kind of indicate whereabouts the gate that we would be flying from would be, which was quite helpful. I managed to track it to either just outside of the plane that we were on, or it may have been on the plane. I had heard that some people had it says with you when you're on the plane and obviously your luggage is underneath, but I didn't have that at Heathrow. When we landed in Doha, obviously I was keen to check that my luggage had arrived, but unfortunately it was still showing as being at Heathrow, which of course made me a little bit nervy. But you'll see from some of these clips that the Wi-Fi in Doha airport was a little bit dodgy. And so that might be why. It might just be that it wasn't picked up for whatever reason. Equally, the way that AirTags work is that they ping off iPhone signals. So it's something to do with like an encrypted signal that iPhones can pick up and then obviously tell the Apple servers, which then ping back to my iPhone. So basically you're relying on there being people within a certain vicinity with an iPhone to pick up that signal. So equally it may well just be that nobody on the ground in Doha had an iPhone within that vicinity. Maybe they all have Samsungs or Huawei's or something. So obviously I didn't know if my luggage had ever arrived to Doha, but fortunately when we landed in Phuket I could see that my luggage had been in Doha. So that was kind of one step forward, but equally it didn't tell me that my luggage was in Phuket. So I knew that it had gotten to Doha, didn't know if it had made it to Phuket, but fortunately it did come out, so it did make it safely. Overall, that was a bit of a stressful journey and I was kind of like, ugh, what a waste of money. The AirTag didn't really work. Obviously we then flew home and it was the same route but backwards, so Phuket to Doha and then Doha to London. I didn't really track my luggage through Phuket, but I did check when we got to Doha and it did actually flash up that my luggage had arrived in Doha, so that was good. And more helpful than that, it actually flashed up when we got back to Heathrow. And for some reason, there had been 2 Qatar Airways flights in from Doha to London that had arrived at pretty much the same time, so it was difficult to tell which was which. You had to know your flight number. And I'm usually really good at this, but I'd actually ended up taking us to the wrong belt. So we'd seen all this luggage going around and obviously ours wasn't there. And I looked at my phone and it said that my AirTag was on like the opposite side of that building. And my partner said, I'm just gonna go and check that we're at the right belt, and we weren't. So in that sense, it was quite helpful to have the AirTag because it told us that we were in the wrong area of the airport, and we picked up our bags immediately because they'd clearly been circling around on the other belt for a while. So overall, the journey back was much more successful than the journey there in terms of the AirTag. I've also recently come back from a trip to Gran Canaria. I'll be doing a couple of videos about that moving forward, so if you want to see those videos, then make sure you press subscribe so that you know as soon as they come out. Gran Canaria was a direct flight and we went from London Stansted this time. Once we dropped off the luggage in the airport, it took about an hour before it flagged up on my phone that my luggage was no longer with me, which obviously is not ideal if you've left it behind somewhere. I don't know if there was something going on with the internet or the Wi-Fi, but it was when I actually opened the app that it then flashed up that your luggage is no longer with you. Again, I could see that my AirTag was at the gate, so again, we sort of knew roughly where we'd be flying from, which again is helpful to know. And actually this time I had much more success on the plane. So when I actually got onto the plane, I checked my phone and it said my luggage was with me. Obviously it was underneath. However, there was quite a delay when we got to Gran Canaria. There were kind of a few bags coming out here and there, and I was sort of hovering by the little hatch where they first come through to see if my phone would pick up that my AirTag was close by, but it didn't. So again, I think that's probably to do with the fact that it's not supposed to pick up moving objects. And then on the way back, again, I could see that my luggage was at the gate in Gran Canaria Airport and then on the plane with me. And the bags came out like straight away once we got back to Stansted, so I didn't really use my AirTag for that. So overall, I've had a bit of a mixed success with the AirTag, to be honest. I think when it works, it's fantastic and it's great for easing your mind. But overall, I think if you're a bit of a nervous person about that sort of thing, I would think very carefully before you do it, because as I said with me, the difficulty is that if it doesn't work for whatever reason, are you then going to become unnecessarily anxious, worrying that your luggage has been left behind when perhaps the AirTag just hasn't worked as it should? Fortunately, despite being quite a worrisome person, I was able to kind of say to myself, right, the technology might just not be working, it's probably all fine. And obviously it was all fine, touch wood, and hopefully it continues to be. I suppose it's just nice to know that if the worst does come to the worst, then my AirTag is in my luggage and chances are there's going to be somebody on the ground staff with an iPhone who can pick up that signal. You can also mark your AirTag as lost, and I think that then pings to somebody close by and gives you details so they can get in touch with you. It's all quite a good idea, but I think ultimately it hinges on whether you need it to work like all the time, or whether you're kind of happy for it to work if it is gonna work, but if it's not, then it's not the end of the world. I think I paid just under £30 for the AirTag. So that is my review of using an AirTag in your hold luggage. I really hope that's been useful. I was trying to look for a video like this before I bought my AirTag and I just couldn't see one anywhere, so I figured I might as well make this video in the hope that it helps somebody else who is looking into AirTags and using them kind of if you're flying abroad. If you did like this video, then please do press the like button because it just helps more people to see this video. And if you want to see more travel content, then make sure you press subscribe. As I said, I've got a couple of videos coming up from my Gran Canaria trip, and then I'm also going to Florida later this year to Walt Disney World and Universal Studios, and I'm so excited! I talked a bit about my Thailand holiday, and if you want to see the highlights from that trip, then you can press here. And don't forget to press my face to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!